Hey, what's up everyone, it's Deck Tech time, and today I'm covering Kassai on the channel. This is a deck that I've already covered on my Patreon about a month ago. By the way, if you need any kind of blitz deck, I have optimized decks for pretty much every hero over on my Patreon, so feel free to go and check that out. But I wanted to cover this deck on the channel today because I have been playing this a lot. Like most of you know that usually I prefer playing Ira. Well, Kassai's playstyle is very similar to Ira's in terms that you get to attack with both the weapons in one turn. The weapons don't have go again naturally like the ninja weapons do, however with things like Driving Blade, which is now a new card from FFXIV, it has become very consistent to give the first blade go again and then attacking in with the second one. Plus you have all that warrior shenanigans with the attack reactions, which makes it a lot easier to push in damage than it is with a ninja hero, which has a lot more flat damage in general. So I'm very satisfied with the deck. I managed to get second place at my local skirmish with it, and I managed to have a top 8 placement at an event that I joined at SUD Games, so it's a very solid deck. It doesn't really win from Viserai though. Like against Viserai it really struggles because this deck needs like 3 or 4 turns to win. And generally speaking, Viserai can go off on turn like 2 or 3 or even earlier than that at times. So it's a bit difficult to really be able to capitalize on the Viserai matchup. But that doesn't mean it's a bad deck. I think if you bring it to some armory events, you should be able to get a decent amount of wins and maybe still get first place. Simply from the sheer amount of wins you get from facing off against anything that is not Viserai. On top of that, the deck is very easy to navigate. For the most part, it kind of navigates itself. Like all the play lines are very straightforward. There isn't too much of these are really the professional plays that you need to do with this kind of deck, which we see in decks like Viserai and even some of the Guardian decks nowadays, that there is a bit of high skill shenanigans going on. That's not the case with this deck. So for newer players, if you're looking to get into Flesh and Blood, this is the deck for you. This deck is extremely solid for new players out there, so you should definitely check it out. So you have Kassai. The main gimmick of this deck is you have these 2 Centauri Sabers. They attack for 2, but if they're blocked with an attack action card, they gain +1 attack. And then Kassai has a very nice built-in ability that the second sword attack each turn costs 1 less resource. Really great stuff. And then it also says at the beginning of your end phase, if you have attacked with 2 or more times with weapons this turn, create a copper token for each weapon that hits. You don't need to know the effect of the copper tokens, you never activate them, but they are very important for a card that we will get into shortly. So as far as equipment goes, I am currently running the Helm of Sharp Eye, but I'm probably gonna remove that one from the list entirely, because every time when I play it, I never really get to activate it. I never have like a moment that I feel, now is the time to activate. I think the Arcanite Skullcap is much better. However, if you're a new player and you don't have the money for something like an Arcanite Skullcap, I would definitely get the Helm of the Sharp Eye. It's not as good as the Skullcap by any means, but having that attack reaction built into it on top of the Battle Worn does mean you can block 1 damage and still get some value out of it, so it is a very good budget piece instead of the Skullcap in my opinion. Same with the Gallantry Gold. In most case scenarios, the Braveforge Bracers are just better. Like the Gallantry Gold, the issue is like you want to set up your turns for a while, right? Like you want to set up like 3 or 4 turns, building up your copper tokens and then going all in. And the Arcanite Skullcap and Braveforge Bracers just allow you to do that more consistently. So even though the Gallantry Gold is a much stronger card than the Braveforge Bracers when activated, it's just not worth the trade-off, especially since you can usually push the opponent into a corner and force them to continue blocking after you have your big Blood on the Hands turn anyway. So for the experienced players out there, Arcanite Skullcap and Braveforge Bracer to go to. For the new players out there that don't have the money to build this deck yet, go for Gallantry Gold and Helm of Sharp Eye. In terms of the Valiant Dynamo, unfortunately Valiant Dynamo is a must-have piece in this deck. Every single turn you will be attacking with 2 swords, or at least almost every single turn. and by doing so you will be resetting the battle worn counter on this equipment piece, which means that over the course of the game you generally get to block with the Valiant Dynamos around 4 or 5 times, which in Blitz means you have 5 extra life straight off the bat. You could of course use something like an Iron Rod piece in order to mitigate that. Well, no, Iron Rod piece is a wrong example. What's the other one called? Refraction Bolt is that one, to give go again to your weapon and still be able to block 1. But missing that 4 life is huge in a deck like this, especially because it's so combo centric and you really need that time to set up your combo play. So the Valiant Dynamo is a must-have piece. It's quite expensive. The Courage of Bladehold is also a must-have piece, also a bit expensive. So generally speaking, if you want to build this deck, you're looking at a €200 upfront price just to get started with this. It's a lot of money, but it's a very fun deck to play. So in terms of non-attack actions, Blood on the Hands to the left is the thing that makes this deck viable nowadays. So you can remove any number of copper tokens on the field, and then you can choose any of those modes twice. So you can give a weapon +1 attack, you can give a weapon go again until the end of turn, or you can give it an additional swing during that turn. And by doing so you can build up some shenanigans that you basically give +1 to both the weapons, you give both of them go again, you give both of them an additional swing, and then you can crack your Courage of Bladehold in order to make your weapon swings free, and then you can swing 4 times with your weapons without pitching a single card. We have a lot of 0-cost cards that help to buff our attacks, like Hit and Run by itself. It helps us to give go again to our first weapon if we really need to. However, the red one and the yellow one especially are also useful because it can give +3 or +2 attack to the second swing that we do. And if you combine that with something like a push forward that gives dominate to the weapon swing as well, you can pull off some very nice shenanigans. Slice and Dice as well, it's basically a 4 for 0. The first weapon will get +1, the second one will get +3 if you play the red one. So generally speaking, I would advise try to get a push forward into your arsenal and then work your way up towards a big turn that you swing with a weapon. You use your Blade Runner, which will give go again to your weapon as your attack reaction, which will then also give a boost to your second weapon swing. Next you play the Hit and Run, you play the Outland Skirmish and stuff like that, and you play the push forward, and then you go in with a massive dominated attack, sometimes like 11 or 14 damage even. It's a lot of good stuff, it's very nice to go in like that. Spoils of War, it gives +2 and go again, but what's cool about Spoils of War is that weapons you control, if they hit, they create 2 copper tokens. So if you can somehow get the Spoils of War turn, if you can get your weapons to hit, you can build your copper tokens very quickly, which you can then use for your cash-ins and your Blood on the Hands in order to gain a lot of advantage against your opponent. Outland Skirmish is also cool, like the first weapon that hits each turn after you play an Outland Skirmish, you generate a copper token as well. So generally speaking, you don't really need 6 copper tokens for Blood on the Hands, but if you can give go again to both weapons or like an additional swing to each weapon, which would require like 4 tokens, then you are kind of in business and you can pull off some nice shenanigans. But you need to get there, you need to have like at least 4 tokens, or at the very least like 3 tokens in order to make the Blood on the Hands worth playing. And in order to do that, we have all these nice attack reactions right there. So like I said, the Blade Runner, it says target one-handed weapon attack gains go again, and then the cool thing is that your next weapon attack this turn gains +3 for the red Blade Runner, all the way to +1 for the blue one. Clint the Quicksilver, it's a free-to-play attack reaction, gives go again to a weapon. If your opponent happens to be blocking with something from hand, this also lets you draw a card, very nice indeed. And then in the swing is a +3, but only if you have attacked 2 or more times with a weapon this turn. In the swing, sometimes it's a dead card when you draw into it, but in the worst case you can always just pitch this one in order to pay for your weapon swing instead. It's not great, not perfect, but it is what it is. If you can get this on your second swing, then usually you can ensure at least 3 damage going through. And by ensuring 3 damage going through, it means with Kassai's ability you will be generating a copper token. Out for Blood is very nice to use on your first weapon swing because that will give +3 to that weapon, and thus if it hits you will get a copper token from Kassai. But its reprise effect, if the opponent blocked the first weapon, it gives +1 to the second weapon swing this turn as well. So doing that, make sure that your second weapon swing will be coming in for at least 3 damage, and usually in combination with the Blade Runner it has a +3 or +2 on top of that as well. Not many Kassai players play Rout. I personally love Rout, especially in combination with the Dominate turn that you use your push forward in order to give Dominate to your second weapon, and then while they are blocking with just 1 card, you can then play the Rout, bounce the card back to the hand, and that way the Rout can basically function as a +6 for just 2 resources, and it's all locked in a single card. It's just very good. I really like Rout in the Kassai deck. A lot of Kassai players I've talked to, they seem to disagree. They feel Rout is too expensive for the Kassai deck, but I feel if you can get a Rout in your arsenal and you just use that just the right time, it really wins you games. Like, it has won me a lot of games, to be honest. Stroke of Foresight, it gives +3. If the opponent blocked your attack, you also get to draw a card and then put 1 card from your hand back on top of your deck or the bottom of your deck, which helps you to fix your hand in case you need a blue for the next turn, or if you are trying to, if you drew into too many blues, for example, you can easily put 1 back into the deck, and that way you can easily swap it with something more useful. In terms of attack actions and defense reactions, we only run 2 Nourishing Emptiness and 2 Steelblade Shunts. Again, 2 Nourishing Emptiness, a lot of Kassai players are going to tell you that you should run only 1 or 0. Personally, I feel this card has won me so many games, because if you get Nourishing Emptiness on the very first turn, and you play it, you force your opponent to block with at least 2 pieces of their equipment, or at least 1, I would say. If they have a 4 defense reaction in hand, then it's just 1 equipment. But playing Nourishing Emptiness early really puts the opponent on the spot. By running 2 copies of this, you make it extra consistent, and you are much more likely to pull off that early Nourishing Emptiness turn. On top of that, if you pull off something like, for example, you give go again to your first weapon, you give go again to your second weapon with something like a hit and run, then all you need after that is 2 resources, and then you can play the Nourishing Emptiness at the end of your chain. I won a game in Skirmish like that. It was actually a funny story, because I went first, right, and I told the opponent, like, I hope I have Nourishing Emptiness turn 1. So I drew my hand, I did not have a Nourishing Emptiness. Then I told my opponent, like, no Nourishing Emptiness, that's a shame. But I say that's okay, because my next hand will be go again, Nourishing Emptiness. And then a friend of mine, Flores, he said, like, no, that's too strong, man. You shouldn't draw that. That's a bit too much. The funny thing is, my second turn came around, and well, at the end of my turn, I draw a new hand. And what did I have? I had Glint to Quicksilver, and Nourishing Emptiness in hand. So you can imagine what kind of an amazing turn I had after that, right? Like, just going with the weapon, go again, in with the weapon, go again, play the Nourishing Emptiness. At that point, the opponent had already locked some equipment into my weapon swings, I believe, which meant that they couldn't block the Nourishing Emptiness fully, and I went with 1 card into my arsenal and a 5-card hand into the third turn, which is absolutely disgusting. Steelblade Shunt, it's a 4 defense reaction. It's not the best card, but for 1 it's a blue, so you can always pitch it, and secondly, sometimes you're in those stalemate games where your opponent is at 1 and you need that 1 single damage to close the game, and a Steelblade Shunt will get you there. You just put it in your arsenal, you wait for the weapon swing, you shunt it, and you win the game. It's very, very fun. Like, sometimes you can even play 2 of these in 1 turn and deal 2 damage, which can win you games at times. Not the best defense reaction, but it's nice to have it. It's also nice if you're up against a hero like Kano, or what's the thing called, or like opponent Kassai players. Having 1 of these in your arsenal together with a 2 block from something like your Courage of Bladehold, you can stop a Nourishing Emptiness from hitting with its Dominate effect. So having that single defense reaction is quite crucial in those matchups. Against Kano as well, a lot of Kano players do play Nourishing Emptiness in the main deck. You need to feel a bit like what kind of a Kano players you have against you. But if they are the type of Kano players that do run Nourishing, then getting a Steel Blade under your arsenal can be useful at times. A bit risky as well, like sometimes you want to keep the blue in hand just to be able to block some arcane damage. But usually you keep your Courage of Bladehold as your equipment piece against Kano anyways, and then having a 4 block can be quite useful at times. So yeah, that's pretty much the deck. I will put the FABTB link down in the description for anyone that wants to check this deck out. And in terms of the equipment sideboarding, what you want to do is you want to get the gloves and the Null Rune boots against all the Runeblade players. And if you're up against something like a Kano player, you want to get the headpiece, the gloves and the boots in order to have that Arcane Barrier 3. And then you just need to push a bit of damage and hope for the best that you can stop their arcane damage before they are able to combo off. Push through or push forward, whatever it's called, really helps you to close games against Kano because you can give Dominate to your second swing, so really take advantage of that. And be as greedy as you can with the push forwards, but because push forward coming in for like an 8 or 11 Dominate is the thing that wins you games with Kassai. If you're just slamming every single non-attack onto the board every single turn, then you will probably end up losing because Kassai is relatively easy to block for the opponents if they don't block the first attack but then block 6 or something on the second attack. Then usually they can deny you copper tokens rather consistently, that you're stuck with only 1 copper token a turn. So make sure you really take advantage of the push forwards in order to get some big chunk damage in with the Dominate. And if you can pull that off early on, you can even force the opponent to go into the full defense in future turns. So you just block a bit with your equipment and then you just keep on pressuring them in order to win the game that way. Do I think this deck will get a first place finish in the Call in Krakow? I don't think so. I think Viceroy in every shape and form is just a superior deck here. Like Viceroy's damage output is absolutely sickening. And it's a rather difficult deck to navigate, so most players don't really have the... They don't really play it as optimal as they should, which is reflected in my data analysis that the Viceroy win rate is rather on the low side. But we're gonna have so many great players at the Call in Krakow. There's probably at least 1 or 2 of them that will be able to navigate a Viceroy deck to its full potential, and I kind of expect that Viceroy will win the Calling, but let's see, maybe it's an all team winning because all team has a good matchup against all of the other top meta stuff. But yeah, it's been a while since I've done a deck tech video. Usually my deck tech videos don't perform well, and generally speaking, like if I get like 500 to 1,000 views, that's only like €1 or €2 ad revenue, so it wasn't really worth my effort in the past. But let's see how this one does. Maybe this one is different. If you want to support me, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up button. Also, we do have a Patreon on patreon.com/Kugane Gaming, where I cover pretty much every competitive deck out there. I optimize them, I list them on my Patreon. So if you need a deck, then that's probably the best place to find one. And if it's not on there, just send me a message. I will ask around among all the top players in my contact group, and I should be able to find a good deck for you in less than a few days. Anyways, thank you for watching, and enjoy Kassai, have fun with it, and well, I will see you all very, very soon, hopefully at the Calling. Take care.